Okay, so for those of you who don't know, I'm Simon Nightingale, and I'm chair of Shropshire Humanists. And this is actually one of our regular monthly meetings. So I have a few notices just to start off with. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen. So yes, this is a Shropshire Humanist meeting. We meet once a month. And just to tell you a few of the things we've been doing recently, in March, we had an absolutely superb talk about by Andrew Moffat about making primary schools inclusive, and this is particularly in Birmingham, in areas of mixed ethnicity. And he was a really inspired speaker. And if you want to see that, get in touch. We have a edited video of it. It's very, very entertaining as well. And then last month, in April, we had a sort of compilation of short talks by these people that were informative and interesting and fun and funny. And it was great fun. And if you want to see the video of that, together with lots of poems, get in touch with me and I can send that through to you. So future things. In June, Thursday the 17th of June, we're having a meeting where we're going to celebrate International Humanist Day. We'll be talking about what's happening in humanism in other parts of the world, and some places it's quite bad. As you may know, humanism actually has the death sentence in 13 countries of the world. So it's whereas Christianity only has the death sentence in one country, which is North Korea. And then in July, we have our social event, and it's going to be a walk, followed by a barbecue at Peter and Margaret's place on the Mount. August, we never have an event. And then in September, we're having an event, probably a talk by Shropshire Soroptimists. Now, if you don't know what a soroptimist is, you'll have to come and find out, but I'm sure it'll be very interesting indeed, and actually rather inspiring. Now, you don't have to be a humanist to come to Shropshire Humanists events and social occasions. We welcome people of all beliefs or none, and we actually think it's not healthy for humanists just to meet other humanists. We believe in having a diverse community. For those of you who haven't been in touch with Shropshire Humanists before, we have a number of sort of special interest groups. In fact, one was mentioned earlier, which isn't on this list here, which is walking and talking. And we go for walks and have a good natter at the same time. It's as much about having the natter and the tea afterwards as it is about stretching your legs. And these are some groups that have been going for a while. These continued on Zoom. We had a number of other ones that have stopped during lockdown. We have two new ones starting. Positive psychology is a fascinating area. And if anybody's interested in studying it, get in touch with me and you can join our group. And also, Helen is planning to start a fiction book club. We have a very well-established and popular non-fiction book club. We also have a humanist library, about 300 books now. These are scattered among our various houses, but are all to be borrowed. And they cover a wide variety of subjects here, not just humanism, but a variety of religions and philosophies and Christology and ethics, particularly sort of with a neurological background. So we then come on to today's speaker. Now, I heard Ruth give a talk some time ago, and I immediately contacted and said, you must come and talk to the humanists. Ruth could talk for hours on this subject, and she's actually got it down to 1 hour, and it's extremely good. But I said to her, I want you to talk for half an hour. And she has done so. It is not as comprehensive as it might have been and a bit more condensed, but it is a very, very good talk. And the things she sort of skipped on or left out, we can address later in the discussion. Now, somebody asked me, what's dementia got to do with humanism? No, it's a reasonable question. Humanists would say that there is insufficient evidence to believe in an afterlife. And we therefore say that the one life we have has got to be lived well. We have got to live life well, and we've got to help other people to live life well. So helping people with dementia, helping their families, helping their carers, helping those people, helping the people with dementia. Obviously, this is all integral to humanism. It's part of our ethics and compassion, and it's a no-brainer. If you look back through previous talks we've done, many of them are involved in similar social activism. So what we're going to do today is, in a moment, I'm going to hand over to Ruth, and she's going to talk for 30 minutes. And then we're going to have breakout rooms. I'll break you into groups of about 4 or 5 people for 15 minutes. And before the breakout rooms, I'll explain a little bit more about that. And then we'll have discussion for at least 30 minutes. And again, before that, I'll explain how I plan to organize that. And I hope to end at about 9 o'clock. Now, I think it's important that you realize that Ruth's talk will be recorded. We've had a lot of people say that they're upset they haven't been able to come, and they were very pleased to hear that her talk would be recorded. The breakout rooms will not be recorded. And I want to stress that, because I think many of you may want to disclose quite personal experiences or reflections. The discussion will be recorded, but as I'll explain again later, if any of you want what you said in the discussion to be edited or deleted later, you have a complete right to do so. So the nub of this is that do not worry about this being recorded. It's effectively going to be confidential. Okay, now I have to stop sharing. And I have, right, so let's have our speaker, Ruth.
Hello, thank you very much, Simon. That's a lovely introduction. Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. It's lovely to meet you. And thank you for the invitation to join you this evening. As Simon said, I can talk for hours, so I'm going to, this is going to be a challenge to keep this to 30 minutes, but hopefully there'll be lots of conversation and that'll be fabulous. I need to be able to share my screen, so I'm just going to try and do that. So this is usually, sort of pre-pandemic was obviously sort of a face-to-face information session that Dementia Friends give. And since the pandemic, we've been doing it online, and we use the chat box as a little bit of a function. But in order to keep to time, I'm going to probably say that we're not going to do that tonight, apart from the very first question I'm going to ask you all, if you could put some answers to the question in the chat box, but don't feel you have to, it's absolutely fine. The one thing I do want to say before I start is that obviously talking about dementia is a very emotive and emotional subject, and I would certainly not be offended in any way, shape or form if you felt you wanted to mute me or to turn the screen off or to leave. I appreciate that it's not necessarily an easy topic to hear, but I hope that you'll stick with me. And the other thing to say is that I am a volunteer as a dementia friend. I am not an expert in any way, shape or form about dementia. I have had training to deliver this session. I have had personal experience of dementia. My mum had dementia, so I sort of do speak with a little bit of a personal insight, but equally, I'm not a medical expert or anything like that. So some of what I probably know is a little bit anecdotal from my own perspective. But we'll start, because there's lots I want to be able to share with you, if that's okay. And part of what we're going to do, I'm just going to see if I can move my screen on. Let's see. Yes. So I'm going to ask you all a question, please. And if you are comfortable using the chat box, if you just wouldn't mind using that and telling me, what is the first word you think of when you hear the word dementia? And I'll just give you a few moments to just put some answers in, and I'll have a look at those and see what everybody puts. So some people have put memory, lovely, lost, isolation, dread, mad, see the person and not the illness, painful, fear, suffering, lonely, memory loss, love, that's lovely, yes, forgetfulness and confusion, loneliness, behavior changes, challenge. Oh, you're really super fast. It's like first fingers first, isn't it? It's fastest finger first. Thank you, everybody. That's brilliant. Those are really, really good answers. Yes, somebody's just put awful. Yeah, thank you. They're really, really good answers. And I think the point of the question is that often the first word that we think of is perhaps a negative word. They're negative words. And again, I'm just going to see if I can move my screen on to the next slide, which doesn't seem to be happening. There we go. This is some of the words that people might use when they hear the word dementia. And the basic premise is that obviously those negative words do reflect perhaps how society views dementia, and what the Dementia Friends, which is an Alzheimer's initiative, society initiative, is trying to do is to demonstrate why it feels important that we should maybe try to change those negative societal views. And we see it in the press, we hear it on the radio, we feel it ourselves. Our experiences might lead us to these negative words and negative feelings, and that's not to say that they're wrong. It's just to say that that's as we see it, and that's what Dementia Friends is about, and that's why I'm here, is to talk to you about what Dementia Friends is about. And Dementia Friends is a social action movement, and the aim of it is to increase the understanding within society, within our communities, within our shared spaces, an understanding of dementia, and to inspire action. And it's an initiative that was set by the Alzheimer's Society. And the idea is that what they want to try to do is to create dementia-friendly communities. So, for example, in the town or the village that you live, if the businesses, the organisations, the community groups, the clubs, the scouts, the schools, the church, if all of those people within those communities have a sense of understanding what a dementia friend is and what the key messages are within being a dementia friend, we hope to create a space that becomes a dementia-friendly community, and thereby enhancing the experience of the life experience of the person who has dementia, because they feel supported in the community and the environment that they're in. There are 12 messages within the whole Dementia Friends initiative, but what we would like to really try to do is get across 5 key messages and ask people if they could commit to a dementia friendly action. So this is a little bit of an activity where we have 5 key messages, and you've got the sentences on one side of the screen, and on the other side of the screen you've got 5 key parts of those sentences. And we could write those all down and we could play a bit of a game, but again, in the experience of time, we're just going to move through that a little bit. But you can see that when I press the next key and the words go across, we're going to talk about how dementia is not a natural part of aging, that dementia is caused by diseases of the brain. Dementia is not just about losing your memory. It is possible to live well with dementia, and there is more to the person with dementia. And as I go through each of the key messages, I'm going to give you a little bit of an example or a sort of some anecdotal stories as to why, these are important key messages. So the first key message is dementia is not a natural part of aging. And what is meant by this key message is that not everybody who grows old will develop dementia. And not everybody who develops dementia is old, because there are people under the age of 65, people in their 30s, people in their 20s, and it's rare, but they have been diagnosed with dementia. So in the UK, there are 850,000 people in the UK diagnosed with dementia, and more than 42,000 of those are under the age of 65. So that's an important message to get across, isn't it? That actually not everybody who grows old develops dementia, but not everybody, there are younger people with dementia. And I don't know if anybody saw the BBC Dementia Choir, but that was a really good programme. And if you have the opportunity to ever watch it, it's a very emotional 2 hours of television, but it really does get some fabulous messages across around supporting people to live well with dementia. And one of the messages that it got across very well is that that younger people under the age of 60 and younger are diagnosed with dementia every year. And there was a gentleman in his 30s with a young family and a lady in her 50s. And the way that the host, Vicky McClure, sort of talked to them about their stories, it really did bring home that this is, this is an important message. The second key message is that dementia is caused by diseases of the brain. So we want to sort of talk about how the fact that in the same way that an organ or any organ is affected by or can be affected by disease, so whether that's our kidneys, our liver, our hearts, dementia is caused when diseases physically damage the brain. And what I'd like you to do is to imagine that the brain is a collection of 1,000 fairy lights. I don't know if my hands are in the right places, I can't quite see where I am, but your brain is thousands of fairy lights, and the fairy lights are on. Each of those fairy lights represents a memory, a skill, or a function of the brain. Now, what I want you to do now is to imagine, so you've pulled out your Christmas tree fairy lights and you plug them in and the fairy lights are all on. That's fantastic. There's our memory, our skills, and our functions. They're all there and they're all on. What I want you to do now is to imagine that dementia is causing some of those lights to flicker. So those are our lights are on. You can see the lights have gone on that brain picture. Some of the lights start to flicker. They may dim, or actually the dementia may cause them to switch off completely. And for each person, this will happen in a different order, and that there will be different lights will be affected. So you may have some that will just flicker, they may dim, or they may go off completely. And just like with any other disease, a healthy lifestyle that features regular exercise, a balanced diet, and not smoking can help you to reduce your chances of developing dementia. The idea being that what's good for your heart is also good for your head. Dementia. What is dementia? We talk about, we hear people talk about Alzheimer's, and we hear people talk about dementia. Dementia is an umbrella term, and actually there are over 100 different types of dementia, of which Alzheimer's disease is one of them. Vascular dementia, dementia with Lewy bodies, frontal temporal dementia. There may be dementia associated with Parkinson's, a dementia associated with alcohol and alcoholism. People may have something called mixed dementia. So they may have two of the different diseases that can cause dementia. They may have something such as Pick's disease along with a Lewy body dementia. So the point that we're trying to make is that there are many different diseases that can result in what is called an umbrella term that is called dementia. So in my personal experience, my mum had probably the rarest of all, if you like, because she had what was called a radiation necrosis of her brain as a result of radiotherapy treatment to her brain from brain tumours when she was much younger, and it took 40 years for that dementia to develop as a result of her treatment. But it comes under that umbrella term. Everything that we experienced together was all, were features of dementia. So I was fortunate enough to receive support from the Alzheimer's Society as a young carer for somebody with dementia. The third key message that we'd like to talk about is that dementia is not just about losing your memory. And if we go back to thinking about our brain and being fairy lights and the functions that the brain has, of course, the brain has many functions. And so all of those different parts of our brain could all possibly at some point perhaps be affected by the dementia. So it might be that our motor skills, so for example, being able to use a knife and fork, sequencing, that ability to do things in an order. So for example, making a cup of tea, sort of putting water in the kettle, turning the kettle on, putting the tea bag in, or the leaves in, and doing that in a sequence. Getting dressed, when we get dressed, that's a sequence of events, if you think about how we do that. So if our sequencing is affected by dementia, it might be that we have difficulty putting on our clothes in a particular order. We might put on 2 skirts and not a jumper, or we might forget to put underpants or socks on, for example. Another area of our brain that might be affected is our changes in inhibition. So, for example, a very shy and quiet person might become quite gregarious and outgoing. Somebody who would never have sworn may start to swear, might start to be inappropriate in the use of the language that they use when they're out and about. So those kinds of changes can also happen. Changes in visual perception is also something that may happen. So that might be about a judging of distances, which, if you think about driving, obviously that's a particular challenge. one of those things might be perception of, so for example, a dining tablecloth that has mixed fruit pictures on it. That might be seen as 3D, and the person might try to go and grab the fruit as though the fruit is there looking up at them. Another example of that is going into a shop or into a home or a house where the first thing that you see as you open the door is a black rug. And a black rug could look like a big hole. And the person who's at the door would be really quite scared about going through the door and would not want to go forward because what they're seeing in front of them is a great big hole, and that's very scary. And if you were out and about shopping, for example, and going into the bank and trying to go to the post office and trying to do those, those tasks that we need to do, and going in becomes a barrier because you can't go through because of the black hole, that may cause the people around you to get frustrated, to tut a little, to be a little bit impatient perhaps. But of course, if those people had a greater understanding of perhaps that there is a reason for why this is happening, and it might be dementia, maybe they might be able to support that person by perhaps asking the people in the shop, is there another way in? Could you come out and help us outside? Is there a way that we can do this that could be helpful? So I hope you're getting a sense of that, what the Dementia Friends is about is just trying to broaden our understanding and experience of what it's like, or it might be like for somebody living with dementia, and the things that they may find difficult, and that if we were to meet them out and about when we're doing our jobs and our chores and have that understanding, that could be really helpful to them, because what that does, of course, is reduces their experience of a disability or disability. It helps them to feel valued within their community and being part of something very special, obviously. Communication is probably the one area that we all associate with dementia, where people maybe forget words or use the wrong words. So, for example, they might call a dog a horse, or forget what the word car keys is. So, for example, the keys on the table, and they know that those go in the thing that we use to go somewhere, but I can't quite place what those words are. What are those things? So we might forget or use the wrong words. And of course, it might also be that as dementia develops, our ability to communicate becomes less and less, and actually we are unable to communicate. And that's probably at sort of the very much later stages of dementia. But the other thing to say about it, of course, is that with there being lots of different types of dementia, how that advances or progresses, or the prognosis will be different in each of those conditions, because they are different conditions affecting different areas of the brain. And that's why it's important to sort of have a diagnosis and to be able to get the help from the medical staff to understand what you can expect. The next key message is that it is possible to live well with dementia. And we sort of ask ourselves, well, what does that mean? And it's about saying that people with dementia may still be able to work, drive, have relationships. What they do and how long they can do it for will, of course, depend on their own particular circumstances. And living well means different things to different people. We're not saying that dementia obviously isn't without challenge, because of course it is. But despite the challenges, it is possible to live well. And what people obviously are looking for and need is support and understanding. And this is what the Dementia Friends initiative is about to help us to do that in a really helpful way. So, for example, it might be that somebody who plays the guitar, the one thing that they can do and do very well, even when they can't find words or language, is play the guitar, or dance, or garden, or draw, recite poetry. And it's about remembering that there's more to the person than the dementia. If we were to think about how we can support people, communication is really key to that. So listening and perhaps reducing any background noises that might act as a distraction. So turning the television off or turning the radio off. Speaking clearly. Using language that is not euphemistic, so I'm not using euphemisms for anything, but about using clear language. Body language, we take a lot of our understanding and interest from language by what the presentation of that and body language. Maybe using aids. So, for example, in an environment such as a workspace or an office space or a shop or anything, sort of having signs where there is a picture as well as words, because that could be really helpful, just having those things around. And a dementia friendly business as part of a community can have an environment checklist to work through to try and help their building be as dementia friendly as possible. And that's what dementia friendly communities is all about. It's about encouraging businesses to be able to have space where everything in that physical environment is helpful for somebody with dementia, just to make that a little bit easier for them. And of course, treating people with respect. You know, we're all still people, human beings at the end of the day. It's what Simon said at the beginning, you know, it's about being human and having empathy and compassion and understanding, and seeing somebody as the person and seeing them as they are, rather than seeing an illness or seeing the illness. And we hear this about cancer, don't we? We say that people say, you know, please see the person and not the cancer. And I think, you know, the same is true. The same is true of dementia. And I'm not saying at all through any of this, of course, that, you know, looking after and caring for somebody with dementia isn't without its challenges. You know, certainly been there and experienced that. But what this is trying to say is let's just try to broaden our view a little bit. The fifth key message is that there's more to the person than the dementia. And so it's in the same way that we look at somebody with cancer or diabetes, we see the person first and not the illness. And I'm just going to give you a quick example of what we mean by this. So there's a care home in the northeast, and this is a true story. They had an elderly resident with them who had dementia, who constantly tapped her fingers on every surface. And again, I can't see what you can see on your cameras, but hopefully you can see my hands tapping on a surface. And it was tap, 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 tap. And this lady, she had no verbal communication. She did this tap, 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 tapping. And it actually began to be quite annoying, I think, for the staff and the residents, perhaps the visitors, who nobody could understand why she was doing it and why she was tapping. And then one day her niece from Australia was visiting and had called in to see her aunt. And of course, the staff wanted to ask her as much as they could about her aunt as possible, because this lady, they didn't know anything about her. They knew nothing about her past, her story, her life. And so they were keen to learn as much as they could. But the niece was very much she didn't really have a great deal of information to share with them. So it was a bit difficult for her to answer their questions. But they spent the afternoon chatting and talking and trying to find out a little bit more about what she did know about her aunt. And anyway, as they got talking, they discovered that during the Second World War, she'd worked at Bletchley Park and had helped to crack the Enigma code, which had obviously helped to end the war. And she was receiving messages that had been transmitted in Morse code. So instead of tap, 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 perhaps it was dot, dot, dash, dash, dot, dash, dot. This, of course, you know, changed everybody's view of this lady. You know, she became a heroine. She was just that people were just, you know, in awe of everything. That they then had this realization about, you know, this lady in her life. And the local papers came to do a story about her. And what was really interesting was that in the papers, when they did the story, the scoutmaster spotted it. His scouts were learning Morse code. He went to the care home and said, could my scouts come and, you know, perhaps do a bit of Morse code with her, because it'd be great for them to just do a bit of practicing. They embraced all of that. And actually what that then meant for this lady, of course, is that she was able to then communicate with the care home staff, and she was then able to say to them, do you know what, you've been putting sugar in my tea all this time and I don't like sugar, or please can I have a jumper, I'm a bit cold, or that new potatoes, no, you're all right, thanks. You know, she was just able to communicate, and that was just revelatory, obviously, for everybody. And it made her feel valued, it made her feel happier and engaged, and for the staff that was great, for the residents that was great, and that was helping her to live well with her dementia. And there are many, many stories just like that from care home experiences across the country. And as I say, I've got loads I could share with you, but I won't. But we could maybe come back to those a little bit later. So that's just an example of, you know, there's more to the person than the dementia. So just move on to the next slide, if I can. Dementia Friends is about turning understanding into action. We would like to encourage people to stay in touch with somebody who they know who has dementia. Make people aware that the Alzheimer's Society and Dementia Friends and other community groups are there to help support people. There's Dementia UK, there's the Admiral Nurses, there's the Alzheimer's Society. A big thing, I think, is to say not to use the word dementia sufferer or the term dementia sufferer, because suffer implies a negative connotation, doesn't it, as we talked about at the beginning, but perhaps to use person living with dementia or someone living with dementia rather than dementia sufferer. And actually the press have said that they will not use the term dementia sufferer, and I think that's a really big move forwards. That's just brilliant. And actually there was an article in the Guardian the other week which was about how exercise bikes with big computer screens have been taken into a care home in the hope that it would help people to mobilize and get moving and do a little bit of exercise. And actually what they'd found was actually people with dementia, it was really engaging for them, and they were really embracing it, because when they were on the exercise machine and pedaling away and the computer screen was there in front of them showing them the Alps or Sardinia or somewhere, they would go, oh, I went there and I did this and I did that, and it was just great. And in the whole of this article, not once was the word suffer used. And I thought that was just brilliant. That was really, really good. So just a bit of a recap on the 5 key messages about how dementia is not a natural part of aging. Dementia is caused by diseases of the brain. Dementia is not just about losing your memory. It is possible to live well with dementia, and there is more to the person with the dementia. And I would also encourage you to look at the Dementia Friends website. This lady in this picture, she's on there, and there are people on there telling their stories of how they live well with their dementia. And again, it just is really helpful to help bring back that message about how people, how they live well with their dementia. Now I'm going to just use a bookcase analogy, which is going to just help me to explain to you how dementia affects our brain and our memories. And I want you to imagine that I am 80 years of age, and there's a full bookcase beside me that is as tall as I am. And each book represents a memory or a fact. So my top shelf holds my most recent memories. And you can see this on the picture where the arrow says on the top shelf, those are my most recent memories, such as what I had for breakfast this morning, going to get the paper, walking the dog, whatever they may be. By my shoulders are the books from my 60s, and that might be my retirement party, going on a big holiday, starting to do a bit of childcare for grandchildren, or taking up new hobbies and interests with all that free time I have now that I've retired. By my knees are the books from my 20s. That might be meeting my partner, getting married, starting a family, my first home. And by my feet are the books from my childhood, such as going to school, playing out, getting into mischief, whatever I may have been up to when I was a child. I want you to imagine that dementia then rocks my bookcase side to side. So, and as the bookcase starts to rock, of course, what happens is that those books that are at the top of my bookcase, they start to fall off, because that's the part of the bookcase that rocks first and rocks the most. So those at the top start to fall off. So that is that my most recent memories become the memories I can't remember. So I can't remember what I did this morning. I can't remember going and get my food shopping this week. I can't remember what I did on Monday when it's now Saturday. And as the dementia progresses, the books start to fall off from the other shelves, making their way down the shelves. So that where we get to is, of course, that my upper bookshelves have started to empty and my upper memories have started to go. So what I think of as my most recent memories are those that come from further down the bookcase, such as those earlier in my life, so those in my 20s. So what becomes my reality at this point is things that I was doing when I was in my 20s. So if I'm in my 20s, of course, I'm living in the 1950s perhaps, and I go to make a cup of tea, there are things that are very different in my kitchen. So the layout, the appliances, the kettle. And I want to go and fill the kettle, and I might go to put it on the hob. But as my carer, my friend, my family member who's with me whilst I'm doing this, you'd probably be a bit panicked that I go to put my electric kettle in my kitchen that I don't recognise as an electric kettle on my hob, because you would see that as a danger point, of an accident waiting to happen, really, wouldn't you? And you go to stop me from making my cup of tea, but that frustrates me and that upsets me, and I get annoyed and I get angry, and that I'm not very happy about the fact that you're stopping me from making my cup of tea. Something that perhaps could be done to help me support me to make a cup of tea when I'm in my reality is my 20s and living in the 50s in my house is perhaps switching my kettle for a whistle one so that I could continue to make a cup of tea. You see people talk about putting sticky notes around the kitchen to help people to work out where things are and how to do things and how to sequence, because obviously making a cup of tea is a sequence. So it's just about seeing, you know, if there are practical things that perhaps we can do that helps somebody to continue to be able to do things for themselves, rather than doing for, but doing with. And I know I was very guilty of doing that, you know, when there was things going on in my mum's kitchen that made me shiver, because it felt very dangerous. And I felt that all I could do was do for, but actually what I should have been perhaps trying to do a little bit more was doing with. So our factual bookcase is memories and skills and factual information. But on the other side of my brain, I have an emotional bookcase. So I want you to imagine that my emotional bookcase is a stronger and sturdier bookcase. It's made of solid wood, whereas my factual bookcase is perhaps slightly flimsy and, dare I say, comes from IKEA, and, you know, sort of that's why it rocks a little bit more. But my emotional bookcase is much more strong. It's much more sturdy. It's made of solid wood. And my emotional bookcase carries my emotions and my emotional memories. And it's much more resistant to dementia, because so the contents are safer in it for longer, and it doesn't rock as much, and those stay there. So if you see at the bookcase where my factual memories have fallen off, and my memories at the bottom of those from when I was younger, my teacher, she made me feel inspired. He inspired me, and I can still remember those feelings of inspiration. But what we're going to talk about next is, you know, some examples of how the two bookcases sort of work together. So a little bit of an example of this might be you come to visit me and we've had a row because I've forgotten your name. And there's a lot of anger in there. But that emotion that leaves me with is one of sadness and upset and angry, and I can't quite figure out why that feeling is there, because I can't remember the fact that we've had an argument. And you may think that, you know, why do I go visit? We have an argument and it doesn't, you know, it ends badly and nobody feels good and it's not great. And, you know, that comes bouncing off of that bookcase and we forget, and I just feel angry. Why do I go? On another day, you come to visit me and we go to the seaside and we have an ice cream and we've had a great day. We've had some fish and chips and we've had a paddle in the sea, and we've had a little bit of an ice cream, and it's been absolutely brilliant. And we get home and I can't remember the ice cream. I can't remember the fact that you've given up a day off work to take me somewhere and we've had a lovely day. But what I do remember is that I've had a lovely day. I feel really loved. I've been happy. We've had some laughter. I feel content. And again, you might feel frustrated that, you know, I've taken a day off work and we've traveled all this and done this, but you don't remember any of that. Why did I do that? But if you could remember that you've left me with this lovely, happy, contented feeling, and I feel really, really great, then hopefully that will just keep you going to think, yes, we can go and do more of those days, and we can do all of that. And if somebody doesn't remember that day, that's fine, but at least we've left with a really, really nice feeling. And that's why the Dementia Friends would encourage people to continue to visit somebody, because, you know, there is more to the person than their dementia, and we're helping them to live well with their dementia. Just a recap, really, to just say what the 5 key messages are again. I haven't been watching what's been going on in the chat box, so I'm sorry I haven't answered any questions in particular. Dementia Friends is about turning understanding into action. So when I first heard this talk, my action was twofold. One was to have Dementia Friends champion training so that I could deliver this if I had the opportunity to do it, but also to look at how our business, our organisation could become a dementia friendly business, or be part of a dementia friendly community, which was about having our premises looked at as being dementia friendly in terms of how it feels when people go into it. Other people may volunteer for an organisation to help people with dementia, stay in touch with somebody with dementia and take them out, sign up to campaigns. So, for example, this week is Dementia Awareness Week, and there's a new campaign being launched which is called Cure the Care. So basically what the pandemic has done, of course, has really highlighted just how much support the social care system needs. And one of the campaign that the Dementia Alzheimer's Society has brought in this week is a petition for cure the care. So signing up to that campaign, and just there's a petition I've gone on and signed it. Just signing that will hopefully drive that. And the Methodist Housing Association are doing exactly the same, actually, in their own way too. So there's a big drive from all of the social care systems to try and push the government to do something about having underinvested in social care for such a long time. But that's take that political thing away. Maybe doing some fundraising or donation. Anybody who knits and is craft and creates, you can create things called twiddle muffs, which are these great things that are, if you make Victorian hand muffs where you put your hands inside, and then you put things on there that that are tactile, so that people can, restless hands can be in there, just, buttons, or what else have I seen on them? Buttons and fabric and felt and scratchy things. And there is lots of things online about how to make twiddle muffs, and they're just great. Give them to care homes, give them to somebody with dementia. They're absolutely brilliant, and care homes would love to have them. By being part of what you've been part of tonight, you automatically become a dementia friend. If you want to sign up for a digital badge that you can then show on your social media, put on bottom of an email, share on your social media you've heard this tonight, and encourage them to attend a Dementia Friends session. There is no such thing as a small action. They're all great. Any action, any big or small. Tomorrow is in Yorkshire anyway, and I think this lady's doing it nationally. Denim for Dementia. She's the lady just down the road here in Pudsey from us, and she has started this campaign for her mum, and wearing denim tomorrow and donating to the charity. She's raised over £400,000, I think, so far. So we're all off in our denim tomorrow. There's just, small things that just £1 for wearing denim at work is just great. So just to bring this to a close, and I think I've kept to time, you can scan a QR code, text friends to 82772, visit the dementiafriends.org website and webinar, and you can see on there about becoming a dementia friend. Happy to sort of help with that as we go through into the breakout rooms or have conversations and chat about how best to do that. I'm sure I've led you to think of lots of things you'd like to ask or talk about. Just to say that there are organisations that can support, and there is a Dementia Connect support line, which is really good, sort of is manned through the working day to gain support if you'd like to talk to somebody about dementia, and how you can be supported and how you can support somebody. And on their website, there's lots of useful opportunities to do things. But you have just helped create over 3.3 million dementia friends. So that step towards creating a dementia-friendly society and community, you've all just been part of that just by listening to me for the last 30 minutes. And so I really appreciate your time. And I'll stop sharing now, if that's okay. And hopefully that means we'll come back to being together. Thank you very much. Yeah.
So, everybody, that was a really fascinating talk and really quite inspiring, particularly if you came from a position of a very negative attitude to the whole subject. What we're going to do now is I'm going to create random breakout rooms of about 5 people a room. And for a quarter of an hour, just chat. Try and let everybody have a say. And if there could be one person in each group who is a sort of rapporteur, who maybe makes a few notes. And the idea of these breakout rooms is to talk about the subject, talk about what you've heard, and talk about your own views and talk about your own experiences. I think most of us have had some experience of somebody who has had dementia, family or friends. Talk about the experiences you've had. And I mean, I accept that some experiences are bad, and it's fine to talk about the bad, but try and do it in a constructive way. Try and think of what it was about the bad that might have been avoided, how things might have been done differently. I'm also very aware that among the people attending tonight are people with considerable expertise. There are several people here from the Alzheimer's Society working locally. Also people from the local Age UK. We have somebody here who's an advanced practitioner in sensory integration. She works at Redlands, and I very much hope at some stage this evening she'll say a few words about what she does. We also have the redoubtable Liz Holsworth, who was telling me earlier about PALS for professional people who have Alzheimer's disease. Liz Holsworth, I think, has probably done more for my neurology patients over the years than I've ever done for them. She's made a real difference to their lives and how they've coped. And others of you, for example, I've been in discussion with one of our Humanist members, Nick Marshall, who was telling me about the use of music in dementia and how it can be transformative. And he was telling me about a short film that he recommends, and he sent me the link to it. And perhaps, Nick, you could put that in the chat and recommend for other people too. So we're going to talk for a quarter of an hour, and then when we come out, I want you then to put into chat comments, thoughts, questions. And it's the questions that are important. We won't necessarily have the answers to them, but to get, the important thing is to ask the right questions. And then we'll have a discussion. Now, let me just say again, what is said in the breakout rooms is entirely confidential. It's not going to be recorded. And we will use what's sometimes called the Chatham House rules. You can later say anything that anybody said. You can report what anybody said in the chat room, but you cannot say who said it. All right? So it is not attributable. And this is, I think, important, because I think some people may well, it's a very moving subject, and I think sometimes these things are private. Okay, so I shall now put you into breakout rooms, and I'll bring you out of them in 15 minutes. Let me just. What I would like people to do now is just to go into chat and put comments or questions in there. You just go to chat where it says type message here, you type it, and when you press return, that's when it'll pop up above it. So I'm going to start putting some in as well.
Just going to answer Valerie, what Valerie's just said about cross-generational involvement. That presentation that I've just given actually is available for being able to deliver into schools. So to scout groups and guide groups. And so the idea behind those is, of course, is that children are the best people to capture in terms of just being able to change those views around societal views around dementia. And yeah, so thank you, Valerie. Yeah, so that's brilliant. Yeah, so it does exist for schools. So if you have anybody within those groups who you think you want those delivered to, contact your local dementia champions, and they should be able to deliver those into those groups, which would be brilliant. Wendy Mitchell's book is really excellent, and actually she's had been doing tours around talking about her book and talking about her experience. And if you have the opportunity to see her, I missed it unfortunately when she was in Yorkshire 18 months ago, 2 years ago, but she's very, very good. So if that happens to be able to happen again, you get to see it, I'd recommend it. It's very, very good. Somebody in our group wondered whether dementia can be hereditary. Yeah, over to the neurologists, I think.
Okay. Dementia is very largely a disease of the elderly. The older you are, the more likely you are to get dementia. And among that group, it is very uncommon for it to be hereditary. But if you have dementia coming on at a young age, certainly in the 20s or 30s, it is much more likely to be due to a genetic disorder. And there are a few specific forms of dementia. For example, Huntington's disease, where you have abnormal movements as well as dementia. That is entirely hereditary. It has no other component at all. So there is a range. But if you're thinking about your aged parent or grandparent and they developed dementia at that age, your risk of developing dementia is not much different from anybody else's. But if you have any concern, the important thing is you discuss it. And there are geneticists who are extremely good at working out which sort of dementia you're dealing with and whether you have a specific risk. And while we're on the subject of genetics, it is a very, very exciting time we live in. If you have a form of dementia that is genetic, and you can work out what gene causes it and what that gene does. Maybe that gene produces a deficit of a particular chemical. Well, there you are. Maybe if we could detect people with that gene and give them the chemical, we could prevent Alzheimer's disease from coming on. It sounds like science fiction, but this is easily within the realms of possibility. Also, it may be that if you have somebody with a young onset or a very unusual form of dementia, it might be worth saving some of their DNA, just a simple blood sample, or you know, one of those matchstick things, and saving that DNA so that if maybe some years later after they're retired, their children or grandchildren say, well, did she have one of those diseases that I should know about because that is now treatable? So these are very interesting areas, but you need to talk to your GP and if necessary with an expert in the subject or a geneticist. I hope that answers that question. Liz Holdsworth, do you want to say something about PALS, P-A-L-Z?
It actually started in Australia with a couple who, John Roth was a surgeon at the Royal Shrewsbury, he's Australian, was a surgeon at the Royal Shrewsbury Hospital around about 1978 or so. They stayed here 2 years. We became very good friends with them. They went back to Australia. He had a very successful career. And then 7 years ago, he got a diagnosis of Alzheimer's. Interestingly, both his parents had had Alzheimer's. And Cathy, his wife, it has the Order of Australia, was the first lady president of Rotary in the Southern Hemisphere. Amazing, lovely person. And she thought, what is there that's going to keep John's neural pathways going in a work-type environment with people from a similar challenging background? And the answer was there was nothing. And so when I was with them in Australia in 2017, I heard myself saying, I'll set up PALS UK, because I thought there's nothing. I'm a former solicitor and have acted for a lot of people with dementia and families of people with dementia. And I thought there's nothing like that here. And basically we operate on having high, skilled talks, good speakers. We operated at the conference centre on the Royal site of the Royal Shrewsbury Hospital. So talks in a work type environment, which that is, with people of a similar background. Please don't feel, because it is professional, because we took on the PALS thing from Australia, we regarded that anyone who's had a challenging work background, which would include a neighbour of mine who's building a house nearby, and he has a business of his own and he has a pretty challenging job at the moment. So it could be a builder, a plumber, we have medical, we have engineers, we have teachers, business people. And we started in 2018. Our last viable meeting, we had 43 people there. And the participant who has dementia, they can bring a supporter who's very often their spouse. We have only one lady, all the rest are men, probably not surprisingly. And we've got some people here, I think, who are, well, I know, I'm not going to say, but one couple we've just been talking to participants. And of course, what we miss terribly is having the social interaction support that we had at the conference centre. So I keep bringing up the conference centre. Anyway, I don't want to dominate the whole thing. If anyone is interested, if you just Google PALS UK, P-A-L-Z UK, you'll find our website. And please ring me up if you want to know any more. I mustn't dominate the conversation. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you very much, Liz. Can I just say I've put a link to that video that Nick Marshall told me about, Dementia and Music, in the chat.
Can I just add a few words about the documentary film, Simon?
Please.
It came to my attention from, of all places, an article in a hi-fi magazine I read. And the man who wrote the article spoke about the film, which describes, it's a documentary describing the work in America of a man called Dan Cohen, who takes personal players, iPods, to people in elderly care homes with dementia, and having found out from relatives, if he can, what music they particularly liked when they were younger, he brings this music to them and plays it to them through headphones. And there were, in the film, many instances of people who had previously been completely closed off to the world outside them, suddenly emerging. And it was profoundly moving and inspiring, the work that he's doing. The film is called Alive Inside. So if you don't happen to get the web address that Simon put up, I'm sure Googling for it will get you there. And it lasts about, oh, I don't know, an hour and 20 minutes. It moved both Judith and me to tears. It was a great thing to see. I mean, tears of almost joy in some places. So I very much recommend it if the subject is of interest to you.
Also, Jackie Jones talks about a book that she actually wrote a chapter in called Mental Health in Older People, a guide for primary care practitioners by Professor Mo Ray. And she's going to send me a copy electronically, and I can then send it on to anybody who would like that. And in fact, if any of you would like me to send forward any other things about that subject we're talking about tonight, leave your email address in the chat. And if you would like to be on our emailing list for future events, again, give us your email. Our events we welcome, as I say, everybody to them, and so on. So some people say, what can we do to prevent us getting dementia? Well, be good. I don't mean good in the sort of moral sense, although that's not a good thing, not a bad thing to do. What I mean is good in leading a healthy life, eat a healthy diet, avoid risk factors of vascular disease. Don't drink too much alcohol. Alcohol itself can produce dementia, and it aggravates all other forms of dementia. Take exercise. That's again shown to be important. Clean your teeth. It may sound very strange, but people with bad teeth seem to be more prone to dementia, and so on. And choose your parents carefully. Mary Latter, you were going to say something.
Would it be all right for me to just say something about the Dementia Action Alliance?
Please.
Just like to say that I think it's lovely that you're doing this session, and amazing that you're joining the numbers that have already become dementia friends and things. Shropshire, Telford and Wrekin Dementia Action Alliance is an organisation, a sort of loose network of all sorts of organisations like Age UK, the police, the fire service, the health service, and things, that works towards making changes that will improve the lives of people with dementia and their families and carers and things. A number of us are doing it. We do it on a voluntary basis. We try to affect change person by person. It's a bit of a social network and things. And some of what Ruth was saying earlier, it's not about, some of it is about major changes. It's about the way services is designed and things, but some of it is about little kindnesses, about being a bit more patient with people, and things that would not just impact on people with dementia, but people with a range of other disabilities and things. So it's not just all about focusing on that, it's just about being a kinder society that helps people and is a bit more understanding. So we try to support organisations and individuals that want to become more dementia friendly, and Ruth described very well some of the things that they can do about making sure. We talked in our little subgroup about IT and the impact, the ageist nature that's my word, the ageist nature of some IT applications and things, and the expectation that if you haven't got a smartphone and you can't use it properly, you don't exist really. But there's a lot of things around that, and about how we work with people, not always with dementia, but people with cognitive impairments of any kind and things. One of the big messages for us that we've got from our membership and for people with dementia and from their families and carers is that people with dementia want to stay at home, and they want to stay in their own community, and they want to do the things that they've always loved doing, and they want to do that for as long as possible. You know, from a diagnosis, from the time you get diagnosed with dementia, you could have 12, 15 years until you start to display, until you have real needs, possibly less than that. But for a lot of that time, you can do things, you can stay at home, you can be looked after at home. And the other thing is about carers. Really important to being able to stay at home is looking after carers. People who care for people with dementia maybe usually are looking after them 24/7. They have no respite, they have no break, and the things that some people have been talking about in the chat about personality changes, difficulties and things, they're dealing with the whole time. And this may be somebody that they've loved for 60 years or more and things. So basically it is, we can't change the world, but we can change our little bit of it, and we can be a bit more understanding, and we can actually look for reasons, and we can actually look to be a bit more understanding of people. I'm going to stop now.
Mary, that's fascinating, and it's really exciting the work you're doing. And some of the other people have written in chat. Jackie Jones is her surgery in Baschurch is a dementia-friendly surgery, and she writes about that in the chat. Age UK run a dementia support group and respite care. The Alzheimer's Society locally run a Singing for the Brain each week. So
what we're doing, I mean, I can send you, we've just done a newsletter of some of the things that have been done. It's only like 2 sides because people like brevity, and it summarises some of the things that people have been doing in Dementia Action Week. And also we're producing, it's just going to print, it's going to be for Shropshire, Telford and Wrekin, a guide to all the services, all the support that there is for people with dementia. A lot of those are community support, they're voluntary supported, like church groups. And there's Age UK, there's the Alzheimer's Society, there's PALS, there's lots of different things, but a lot of them rely on public good spirit to support them and things. And that will go out to print fairly soon. We've been delayed because we actually completed it just before COVID hit, would you believe? And we've had to now recheck all the services to see that they're up and running. But for a lot of people with dementia, they don't have that much trouble accessing medical or clinical care. They can access social care if they're guided to what they need, but you don't know what you need until you don't know what questions to ask until you know what questions to ask. But what they rely on is often groups that are in the community that provide them with some sort of peer support, community networks and things, and that's what they find difficult to access, because also when you're talking about older adults, they may not have internet, they may not have access to computers.
Yeah, thank you very much. And could I ask all of you who are involved in some way in helping those with dementia and their families, maybe just to email me and send me the details, including links, because we have a newsletter that comes out every month, and we'd like to do maybe an article about what's going on in Shropshire. And I think that will be very, very interesting. And again, if you would like our newsletter, just let me have your email address and I'll put you on the email list. It's very easy to unsubscribe if you later want to. So I think at this stage, does anybody particularly want to say something? If you do, I think perhaps just speak up.
Could I just say something? Sorry, a tiny little bit about PALS. Christine Kendall is here. Yes, she's here. Who's a wonderful trustee. There's some wonderful trustees, actually, wonderful people doing voluntary work. But last year, with a lot of effort by a lot of people, we applied to become a charity, national UK-wide charity. I'm rather surprised, actually, that within 8 days, we got making our application. We got an email saying we were a UK-wide charity when we could do nothing. But we are now going to aim to spread across the UK. And really, what I'm saying, if you have relatives in other parts of the country who are involved with Alzheimer's groups, or you think might be interested in setting up a group, please do let me know. And if anybody wants to help us here in Shropshire, I'd absolutely love to talk to you. I'll mute myself now, Simon. Thank you.
Anybody else got anything they'd like to say? Any other points or questions or observations?
Can I just ask if anybody who sends you any details of organisations and links, would it be possible for you to also say if it is a national, if you've got similar services in other counties, because I would be looking for something in Cheshire.
Okay, good point. So all of those who are going to email me, and you've got my email address, I'm sure, make sure you give all the details about local organisations and facilities and also national ones as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, so I did say we'd end about 9 o'clock, and I'm gonna thank Ruth for a really fascinating account, not just about what dementia is, and she bust, I think, a whole lot of myths that many of us misunderstood about dementia, but it's given us a belief that it's not the awful thing, it need not be the awful thing that many of us imagine. And I would add that I think modern science is going to make major advances in this area as well. So, Ruth, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for having me.
All of the
Lovely
people
to meet you
who've
all.
come, thank you very much, particularly those who are working for organisations, and for people who've shared their experiences. Ruth, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Have a lovely evening. What's left of it?
And you.
Thank you.